What is up? What is going on, everybody? Welcome back and welcome into the Seattle Mariners post-game recap and a rare treat, two rare treats actually. One, we get to talk about a win, which we haven't done recently, and I've got Jake from Raise the Trident in the house to help me with
Hello.
this post-game recap. If you guys have not done so yet, head over to Raise the Trident, hit subscribe on his channel. Link will be in the description down below. One of the best Mariner YouTubers and Twitter follows around, and someone that I consider a friend of mine. So go over there, help him out, help his channel grow. And just, it's a great Mariners community we have here with so many cool people that we get to interact with each other, which I really, really love. And also, while you're doing that, if you're new here, actually, if you're not new here, hit the like button, comment your thoughts. And if you're new here, hit that subscribe button. As now I'm on the journey to 5,000 subs after passing 4,000. So thank you, everybody, for the support. Mariners win 10-3. They salvage the final game of the three-game set with the Pittsburgh Pirates. George Kirby is solid, gets the win over 6 innings. Mariners offense produces home runs from Cal Raleigh, Josh Rojas, Dom Canzone. I think everybody in the Mariners lineup had a hit today. So really an all-around, really solid performance from the Seattle Mariners today, at least, to finish off this series. Obviously, winning is better than losing. I'm a simple person. I prefer when the team wins, even when they're doing poorly. It's just nice to sit back and watch them win. I'm sure Jake will agree with me. I'll bring him here in just a second. It certainly doesn't undo what this road trip has been so far, but at the very least, for today, we get to enjoy a Mariners win. Welcome in, Jake. What was your thoughts today on the Mariners W?
Yeah, so I mean, we'll talk about the game in a vacuum. So just the game alone was fine. It was good. I mean, you win 10-3, you're going to take that any day of the week. Really good offensive production, which, I have to put the caveat in there, was a Pittsburgh bullpen game. So, I'm not going to say like, oh, the offense is back, which, I mean, they ever been here? That is the first question, I guess. But still a really nice game from them. Victor Robles had a really good game. Josh Rojas, I want to shout him out for that left center bomb that he hit. It's just that power that you didn't really expect from such a small frame. He hit it 408 feet, so good for him. I mean, granted, it was a fastball really right down the middle, but you just don't think of power when you think of Josh Rojas. So it was nice to see some there. Cal had a good home run to really start the game off, which was really nice to see. Especially he's been your best hitter pretty much all season for the most part, and it has really been keeping up his end of the bargain just in all of his duties. So yeah, I really like the offensive game for the most part. We only struck out 7 times, which is really nice. I love it when it's in single digits, so that's good. And pitching wise, George Kirby had a pretty decent game. It was a decent bounce back game from the Detroit start. Only gave up 2 earned runs, which came towards kind of the end of his outing. Only got 5 Ks, which I thought he'd get maybe a bit more with this Pirates lineup. But at the end of the day, it's a quality start. I will take a quality start whenever I can get one. So overall, a good game in the vacuum of the game itself.
Yep. Yeah, well said. That's when we're doing these analysis and I do the post games, I always say that too. In a vacuum, we're just looking at today. Great win for the Mariners. Like I said, the offense got going. Bullpen day for Pittsburgh, but that didn't stop Detroit from shutting them down. So I think Cal getting that home run early was key. Maybe, and Kirby having a shutdown inning to start the game, I think kind of got them just in that right mindset. They added on runs, which has been a struggle for this team at times. And I thought a big inning, and just again, look at this game as in a vacuum. In the 3rd inning, the Pirates had, I think, 1st and 3rd with 2 outs with Brian Reynolds up. It was 4-0. O'Neill Cruz was on deck, and Kirby got Reynolds to fly out. Thought that was a really pivotal point in the game today. Reynolds gets on there, then Cruz comes up as the tying run. That was probably the one chance where I thought the game could maybe get away from the Mariners, and Kirby did a nice job getting through it. And those lower strikeouts may have come just because they got the big lead early, and he was just pitching to contact a little bit too. But like you said, good to see the Mariners. Only 7 strikeouts. Rojas's home run, I didn't think was getting out off the bat. I thought it was just a routine fly ball, and it just took off and carried. I think Canzone's home run was on a breaking ball. I think it was on a slider, which was good to see from, I think, former Mariner Ryder Ryan. So, overall today, encouraging for the Mariners. I hate to keep harping back, but where are you at this team right now? It's been a brutal road trip against teams that I don't think Pittsburgh and Detroit are terrible. They're not White Sox bad. In fact, they may not be that much worse than the Mariners, but you've still got to find a way to do better than 1-5 on a road trip like that. What's your thoughts so
Yep.
far on this road trip outside of just it sucks?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with that. It's not been fun. It's interesting because it just feels like teams like the Tigers and the Pirates, even being sub 500 teams, it's those teams that seem to give us the biggest fits, like because they don't necessarily have, like the Phillies, right? Like the first five of their lineup are big power guys and all that. So if you like get through that, you're good. Whereas not that anyone is necessarily a huge star other than like an O'Neill Cruz or, potentially a Brian Reynolds. It's kind of more of those like contact lineups for some reason, especially with our, kind of below average defense, I think is what really hurts us there. As far as a road trip's concerned, it's been pretty terrible. I'm not going to mince meat. Like it has been horrible. It's been a disaster. And it's horrible to see because you're in this crunch time of you only have at this point less than 40 games left. You don't have much room for error, and you are just making error after error at this point. You're losing games that you should on paper be winning, and I've kind of learned to not care about what the paper says anymore because
Yeah.
we lost two bullpen games against the Tigers. Like that's unacceptable. So it's just like I don't really know what to think about this team. It's so complex and so it's like you have that faith of like the Mets sweep and you're like, oh, this team has found that energy finally. And then this last week happens and it brings you right back down to earth, even further than earth. It's like the roller coaster that keeps going down and it doesn't stop. Consistency has been a problem all year and they still haven't shown that. And yeah, I mean, there's certainly a lot more things to be said on multiple different facets with this team right now and the management and all that stuff, but ultimately the road trip's been a failure. It just has. And I think they know that, we all know that, and they don't have a whole lot of time to figure it out because the Astros aren't going to pump the brakes.
No, exactly right. And it really is with this team. You talk about kind of the roller coaster, like you said. And one thing for me, and I've mentioned this on my show a lot, is that as soon as they get momentum, they just give it away. Maybe in the middle of the year, they were a little bit better at it, but they get a big series win against the Phillies. Then they lose to the Tigers. Then they get another huge sweep in the Mets, and then they have this road trip. And it's like, honestly, knowing this team, and this isn't a prediction, but just how weird they've been, they'll probably go sweep the Dodgers or something crazy. We'll be like, oh, hey, here we go. And then they'll come back home for, I think it's the Giants, who aren't bad by any means, but they'll struggle there. And it's just the consistency isn't there with this baseball team. And I think that's to your point. I don't know what to make of them. But when I see a team playing like they've been playing, to me, it just kind of looks like a mediocre team. And that's kind of what mediocre teams do. They're more than capable of competing with the best. I think the Mariners can beat the Dodgers. I do. I'm not, again, for anybody, it's not a prediction that they're going to do it. But I think with their pitching, they can hold close with LA. But unfortunately, then, like you said, you get these contact teams put the ball in play with some of the poor infield defense. Teams like Detroit, Pittsburgh, they're able to compete with you too. So you kind of have this, you play up to the competition and you can play down to it. I don't know if it's a mental thing or if it's just the way the team is built. What's your thoughts on that? Do you think there's some stuff behind the scenes or do you think it's just kind of who they are a little bit?
Well, so it's a kind of a hard conversation to have because we've acknowledged this before. We don't know 80% of what's going on behind the scenes, so I'm not going to speak to what may be going on behind the scenes necessarily, but the thing that kind of keeps coming back to me is Cal Raleigh's comment about a week and a half ago about how they just feel like they can't create that energy on a consistent basis for this team. And I think that's kind of part of it is like when they've lost these games, I think we've all observed just this like lifelessness. Like they have no heart or urgency to want to win. And I don't know where that comes from because, you know, a team that can only seemingly turn it on the weekends at home. I mean, that team doesn't deserve to play in the playoffs. Like they don't. And right now, just even outside of that, like my opinion is unless they can find a way to turn it on, and hopefully they prove me wrong, this team doesn't deserve to play October baseball because there's just so much that is it's not even just, I guess, they're playing these really tight games and they just happen to keep falling down. It is a consistent lack of urgency. It feels like they don't even know that this is the best absolute chance in 20 something years you've had to win the division. And for how that doesn't spark energy on its own is beyond me. And that, to me, that just says you don't want to win or you don't care enough. And it's hard because I know they care. I know they're
Right.
putting in the work. I know they're going to the ballpark every day, doing their routines, doing the batting practice, doing everything they can to get better. But you can't put getting energy and getting that motivation like that's not something you can just get during early morning batting practice before a 10 o'clock game. Like that is something within you that you need to find, and it shouldn't be up to, well, unless we're at home with 40 plus
Yeah.
k fans in the stands, we just don't have that. Then you're not going to win this division and you're going to miss out on the playoffs, because trust me, if you make the playoffs, you're going to be looking at 50k fans or however much the, attendance at T-Mobile
Yeah.
Park is. You're going to have plenty of energy then, but if you can't do it against Detroit and against
Yeah.
Pittsburgh, I don't see how they deserve it at this point. And like I said, I'm not rooting for their downfall. I'm not saying
Yeah.
that in the sense of like, I'm just out on this team. I want them to prove me wrong, and I do think they are capable of
Yeah.
potentially going on a good run in September. But based off of all the evidence through all, 120 something games of this season, I don't see how it's going to happen. So hopefully they prove me wrong, but we'll see.
Yeah, no, well said. And throw the Angels in that mix too. That's another kind of mediocre team that this team just hasn't been able to solve, along with Detroit and at least for this weekend Pittsburgh. But that's kind of what it is. We're what game one? I don't know what today, 125 or something like that today, 126. And at some point, you just have to say the team is what it is. And I'm with you. I want this team to win. I'm still rooting for it. And I also agree. I think there is still like at least there's, I think, one hot streak left in this team, one 12-game stretch where they go like 10-2. I do think they have that in them. The pitching's good enough. The offense, it can be hot or cold. We see games like this. They put up double-digit runs. They are capable, but they're just very streaky. And is there just one more hot streak? I think they do possibly have it in them, but I can't sit here after 126 games or whatever it is, look at their overall performance and go, this is one of the 5 or 4, whatever, best teams in the American League. They just look they're inconsistent, and you kind of at some point just are what your record is. And they're 64-61. They're not a terrible baseball team. Their pitching is good enough that I think they'll finish over 500. That was one of my points before the season, that even kind of bottoming out, minus injuries, they're probably going to win at least 80 to 85 games, I think, with the pitching. But it's not good enough. It's not where we want this team to be. If this was the first year of a rebuild, I'd be excited about this team right now. They'd be showing some promise. But this is supposed to be one of the years that gets this team over the top. And I'll ask your opinion on it. I feel I've beaten a dead horse with Scott Service the last couple days a little bit. I think everybody knows my take. I kind of said if they got swept in this series, I think you got to make the change tomorrow. Obviously, they won today. I don't want to come off like, oh, they won. Scott's good now. Congratulations. You're all set. I still have frustrations, but and I think it's time, if they don't get, unless they go on some miracle run here and get in and win a World Series, then it's just a pointless discussion because they're not going to fire the manager, obviously. I know we've talked about it before, but where are you at with the coaching staff? I know some of the struggles you talked about with energy could be something that falls back on the skipper.
Yeah, and I definitely think it is certainly a big catalyst of that. I have my stance on Scott has changed pretty heavily, just even on this road trip. Not gonna
Yeah,
lie,
same.
I think this road trip was kind of the final straw for me a bit on it. And part of it, it's not necessarily all in-game management stuff. I mean, there's been certainly some moves that have occurred that I've been like, what are we doing here? And have potentially lost us games that we should have won. But kind of going back to the energy thing, there was a clip after, I think it was games one's loss in Pittsburgh, where we're all fed up, rightfully so. And, the same question that Scott's been asked after the post games literally all year when we're in these rough stretches about how frustrating this is, his answer has literally always been, well, every team goes through this and every team has these highs and lows, and we're just going through a low and we're going to get through it. That was fine in May, or that was fine in kind of even June. But it's been since June, you have been the second worst team in baseball next to the White Sox. Like, that's unacceptable. And so after the game one loss, I'm pretty sure it was the game one loss in Pittsburgh, he said the same thing. Like, I'm sorry, but that doesn't make any sense. It would be fine if you were skidding for 1 to 2 weeks. That makes sense to say that. You've been skidding for 2.5 months now. Like, and that goes back to the lack of urgency that we have to win this division. You need to stop pinning it on just the natural low of baseball, because before then you weren't at some natural high. Frankly, you were kind of getting lucky a lot of the time, and people were coming through in clutch spots. I mean, and I said this on Twitter, like, the fact that we had to walk the White Sox off twice at home to win that series, in the spur of the moment, we're all celebrating awesome, we won the game.
Right.
Like, deep down, that should have been a huge red flag that we had to walk off the White Sox twice. You know what I mean? So it's just, it goes, the lack of urgency and energy is also something that you can attribute to the manager. And whether Scott is the reason for that, whether, and I'm not saying he's the only one to blame for that, but the way sports works is when you're having those types of issues, you get rid of that manager. The manager has to go. And I've seen a lot of, I guess, comparisons to like Pete Carroll and how that all went down, where the team grew out of him as a manager. I think that's where you're at now. And you have to start asking the question, especially with the pitching staff you have and some of the core pieces you have, as good as they are. And you have to ask this not only for Scott Service and Jerry Dipoto in the front office. Are these the guys? They may have built us up to being sustainable contenders. Are they the ones who will get us over the hump to become perennial winners and October baseball players? And at this point, I don't see that for Scott. Now, the front office, conversation's a bit different and a bit more nuanced because there's a lot more that goes into that. But at least on the Scott Service stuff, I think my kind of mind is I don't think he's the one that's going to get us over the hump. So.
Yeah, I literally I don't even have to add anything. I mean, I will, but that just sums it up perfectly for me. It's exactly where I'm at. The Pete Carroll analogy, I think, is perfect. I want to be clear too, for the Seahawks fans watching, Pete's got a Super Bowl ring, so I think Pete has more accomplishments, but the message is the same. And I think that's the point Jake's making. I made that point yesterday as well, I think, in my post game, is that the message was getting stale. Pete was up there saying same things like, yeah, we're good. We're working on the defense. It's on me. I'm going to get it right. And I don't doubt the work ethic. I know Pete was in there working. I know Scott's working hard at it, but eventually it's the same thing. I can't listen to it anymore. I can't take it. And you made some great points too about what Scott's saying about every team goes through it. If their 10-game lead was down to 5 right now, I would probably be with Scott. We knew Houston was going to get hotter. I'm not surprised that they've cut into that lead. You're still got a 5-game lead with 37 to go. That's really good shape. That would be the right time for that message, because you don't want the guys panicking. You want them to take that deep breath. You don't want them panicking no matter what, but this is not, just to your point, one rough stretch. This is 2 months now. Like you said, they've been the second worst team in baseball behind Chicago. That's 50 games. That's a 30-year season that you have been one of the worst teams in baseball. And to your point, and I got wrapped up in it too, because when they were beating the White Sox, like you said, it wasn't super impressive. I did note that in the post-game recaps, but they were also extending their division lead. They were up to 8-9. So it's they're not playing that great, but hey, this is awesome. Their lead is just growing. So maybe it'll be insurmountable. That's kind of what I felt a little bit. The 10 was just maybe going to be too much. They played 500, they should be okay to get in, but you're at a point where you have a 10-game lead down to a 4-game deficit. That's 14 games lost in the standings. This is not just we got to get through this. It's just a little bit of a tough stretch. It would be fine if they came into this road trip with a 9-game lead and this happened. I could understand that message. And like I said, it's just the same thing, the same message. And I think you hit the nail on the head. I don't know if this is the coaching staff to get this team over the hump. I think there's a good core here. I think this front office and coaching staff is a nice job getting this team to where it is, but they have not taken the next step. And it's now, barring, a nice rally at the end here, it's going to be back-to-back years of not making the postseason after making it. And the goal is to take that step forward. And they've essentially, honestly, they're worse than last year right now. So even taking another step back, essentially. And eventually, to your point, and I'm with you, I don't think this is all on Scott by any means. I think there's a lot of other issues. I think the players deserve blame. I think Scott, the coaching staff, the front office, ownership, I've gotten into that many times. So it's not just, Scott's gone, we're good, just set it and forget it. But eventually someone does kind of have to take the fall here. And I'm at the point now where what do you have to lose with it? It's not going to happen because they won today, but what do you have to lose by letting Christopher Negron have a 38-game audition?
Yeah, pretty much. And, going back to the whole 10-game lead thing, and, like I said, we're the second worst team in baseball since we had the 10-game lead. If this team played 500 ball, we'd still have a lead on the division. Not even asking for them to can still win out. Like, it's just the amount of just it's like undescribable how bad they fumbled this opportunity, because Houston's rotation isn't getting healthier. Right? Like, they're still running out Spencer Arrighetti every 5th day. They're still, like, they don't have really, other than Framber, any of their real starting pitchers. That is the time to strike. And Kyle Tucker's been gone for like a month and a half.
Yep.
And they're just about to get him back, but I think Bregman just went on the IL, or someone just went on the IL again. So it's just, like I said, it was the perfect opportunity to just, like, if you just play 500 ball, you're running away with this division after getting that 10-game lead. But instead, they have lost series to the Angels, to the Detroit Tigers, to the Pittsburgh Pirates. They've won some good series, good for them. Yep. It doesn't matter. Like, they have not been good enough. And it, still doesn't go just on Scott. It goes on the players too. But it's just, it's hard to put in words now, because we've also talked ad nauseum about this for the past 2 months. Like, it's like almost there's nothing more to say about it. So it's just, it's frankly nauseating what it could have been.
It really is. I'm sure people watch us like, Jay, you've been saying the same things, but one, it's a daily baseball show. I'm going to repeat myself many times. And it's true. Like, I'm kind of out of words for it. I've talked about it endlessly. And I said, if you're watching this and you're tired of hearing it, I am sorry. But it's where the team's at right now. And it's going to be a discussion for us, especially if they continue to fall out of the race. I will go to one optimistic thing that I will point to, and then I will say with this team to maybe, and it's not even so much with the team, it's just the situation they're in. I was talking to Mariner Sir about it. And this is where I'm at. You play Houston, I think the second to last series of the year in Houston, or third to last. It's your last road trip of the year. Get me to that series 2 or 3 games back, which is not impossible. And I'm not saying the Mariners are going to sweep it. I'm not. For the record, I know some Houston fans watch, not claiming that. But you'll at least have a shot. You at least will go into that series knowing, because if you did sweep or win it, you'll have the tiebreaker over Houston. Get me to that series 2 or 3 games back. Maybe you get the big 3 lined up. Some people put, put some balls in the Crawford boxes, and you find a way to win or sweep that series, and you control your destiny. That's kind of where I'm at with this team, and it's pretty much the most optimistic I can be, essentially. How are you with, what's your thoughts on maybe the optimistic side of the Mariners this year? If you have any, if not, I get it.
Well, yeah, and it's fun because I started the season very optimistic,
Same.
and I thought on paper they were a great team. My optimism has almost all but worn out at this point. And I will say this, like, when I say everything I've said so far, it is with the knowledge that they are not out of this. They're not eliminated from postseason contention. There is definitely a path where the Mariners are
Yep.
still going to play October baseball, and it's probably still going to come down to those last couple weeks, I would imagine, if not the last week. Which is still exciting. It's still exciting, the fact that we are going to watch meaningful baseball in September, which is awesome. It's just the optimism goes away when my faith in them executing and getting the job done is very low. I'd be very shocked if they ended up making the postseason this year, just because it's the problems they have are just so large that it's hard to put them up against most teams at this point and be like, yeah, they're going to win that series. I would have normally, if these two series happened in the start of the year, I'd been like, yeah, we'll probably win 2 of 3 against the Tigers and win 2 of 3 against the Pirates. Good. Awesome. Now, like, they could honestly play the Athletics and I couldn't even tell you. Like, it would be a toss up. I wouldn't even be willing to make a prediction on how they do in that series. I just, because they've kind of shown they can lose against anyone. They lost against the Marlins earlier this year.
Hmm.
But on the flip side, in the optimistic side, they have shown they can also beat anyone. They beat the Braves earlier this year. They beat the Phillies. They swept the Mets, even though the Mets are kind of so here in this year. They've shown that they can beat those big teams. And also, you have to think about this too when you're talking about Houston, because Texas isn't a factor anymore. It's really
Yeah.
just Houston. With Houston, we hold the tiebreaker right now, and I think we only have to win 2 more games. I
One,
think
just
one
one.
more
Yeah. If
games
you win one,
to
you
have
got
the
it. Yeah.
head to head, and that makes it even tougher for Houston to win. You just have to simply tie them by the end of the year,
Mhm.
which is not insurmountable. So that's my piece of optimism at this point, is that there is absolutely still a path there.
Yeah. I will add though, if you win one against Houston, they win 2 out of 3, you're probably going to be out of it anyway. So you probably do need to win at least two, no matter what, in
Yeah.
that final series. And to your point about being good teams, they're 6-4 against Houston. They've played the Astros well. But it is, I can't, I mean, they just played a series against the Pirates. Now they did face Paul Skeens. I will give him that, but I didn't think Skeens was that great. He certainly looks like he's slowing down a little bit. You had Logan Gilbert, Kirby, and Castillo going in that series. And you lost the series. The 2 games before, and I can talk about the pitching staff and be optimistic about that. And it is a reason for optimism. You had Bryce Wu and Brian Miller throw back-to-back 7 shutout innings, and you lost both games. I mean, I don't even think that's possible. And the Mariners have done that multiple times this season. I know one of the jokes on Twitter is the Mariners starting pitching has to be perfect for them to win. I mean, they've been perfect and they're still not winning games at
Yeah.
times this year. So it's like, what else can they really do? But yeah, and to your point, and I'm with you, they are still in this race. And I still want to see them play October baseball. I don't care if it's with 83 wins. I want to see them get in, find a way, make a run, and win the World Series. But they have set the bar a little higher. They got back to the playoffs in 22. If this year was 2021, I'd feel pretty good about this team. I'd be very disappointed in the way that they've dropped off, but I could stomach it in sort of the first year of coming out of the rebuild a little bit, for lack of a better term. I could stomach it. But you're supposed to be now, taking the steps forward. And they did that 2019, 2020, 21, 22. They got better. But now they've started to go back down. And it's hard to be, let's say hard to be optimistic, because I'll always carry that little bit of optimism with me. But it's hard to sit here and go, yeah, they're in great shape. And I know some people are going, oh, it's a long season, relax. But one, there is only 37, 38 games left. And they are where they're at. Like, I would love for them to go on a run. I do think they might have one more hot streak in them. But I can't look at being 10 games up, 4 games back now, and stand up here and talk about sunshines and rainbows. Like, it's not. It's a team that's struggling overall. It's hard to keep that optimism. I think it's just being real, right?
Well, and I guess, when you say they have one more hot streak left in them, I guess I do have to
Maybe.
point out have they had a hot streak this year? Like, really? You know what I
Good
mean?
point. Well, then they're
I don't
due.
I don't know if they've won more than 4
True.
games in a row this year. You know what
It's
I mean?
crazy.
And it feels like when they have, case in point, the Mets series. Sorry, my daughter's laughing in the
No, no,
background if you
you're
can even
fine.
hear
No
that.
worries.
They sweep the Mets and then they turn it right back around and they, get swept by the Tigers. It's like it's just a weird yin and yang with this team where they may show a lot of promise for, a few days in a row, and it's just right back down to playing, the most unwatchable branch of baseball ever.
Yep.
So yeah,
Yep.
I hope that they can make something happen in September. I would certainly love to be proven wrong that they, if they will or won't. Because once again, once you make it to October, anything can happen. And, this team has the, I think, potential on paper, whether people like to admit it or not, or want to say it or not. I think they have some good pieces that, even if they've been underperforming all year, I mean, that could absolutely be game changers in October.
Yeah, like Julio and Cal, we've seen when they get hot, they can carry a lineup. So I'm with you. And the pitching is good enough. If they get in, I think they have a shot. And baseball's weird. The Diamondbacks made it to the World Series last year as an 84 win team. Even Texas was a team that did not go in super hot. So if they get in, while I certainly wouldn't have them as the favorites, I think they could definitely do damage. That's a great point about the hot streak, too. I didn't realize that they haven't. You're right. I don't think they really have had a big hot streak. So maybe they're due for one hot streak, but it seems like they've had one, 22, obviously the 14 game winning streak. 23, they had that August month last year where they were just on fire. I do feel like there's still just one more something in them to like, and it's probably just hopeless optimism, but I do feel like there's one more run where this team just plays 10-3 over a 13 game stretch. And I do feel like maybe Houston has one more 5-8 run in them. They're not going to be bad, but just kind of mediocre. And again, to any fans of any team watching, it isn't me bad mouthing anybody. It's just hoping against hope that maybe that's in there somewhere. And I'm probably drawing too much from the win today, but they always seem to hook me back in somehow a little bit. So,
Yeah, like I said, I hope that they can find a way to, create energy on their own because, if they need to be able to do that, especially on the road in October, if they make it to it, they need to learn how to do that against, really any team that they're going to face. So yeah, it's just such a weird time right now because they have the potential there, in my opinion. It's just they have been drastically underperforming in most case scenarios, and I don't really know what else to say at this point about the team.
well, if they need to create their own energy, going to Dodger Stadium, against a great baseball team. So there you go. If they've got to thrive off the energy of the crowd and the other team, this is your chance here against the Dodgers. So let's see if they can get something together for this series. I certainly know of all the things to blame. It's definitely not the fans or anything like that have done anything wrong for this baseball team. So for anybody watching, certainly not anything we could all do differently. It's just the way it's been for this team. It's been quite a ride this season, the back and forth that they've had. So any other closing thoughts you've got on the Mariners? Anything else you wanted to bring up that I didn't mention?
I guess the last thing I would say, if any of the people watching are in tune with Mariners Twitter and all that jazz, with the way the team is playing right now, it is very, people are trying to figure out who to blame about, the team's underperformance, whether it's the front office, the players, the management, whoever. There have been people that I've seen plenty of times that, try to point to fan turnout and Mariners Twitter as people who to blame, I guess. So I guess I just wanted to put that out there because I've seen it a lot recently of various people putting that messaging forward, that I think we need to cut that out. Because and I've seen people say, well, it's not going to motivate Stanton to put more money in the payroll if 30K people keep going out to games. And I understand it in a vacuum what you're saying, but the way I've thought about it whenever I've seen it is that when you think of the Mariners fandom as a whole, okay, and if we think about the percentage of Mariners fandom, everyone who is a Mariners fan in the entire world, how many of those people are on Twitter or in our community here watching us doing interacting with anything that has to do with the Mariners on social media alone, that's probably what 20% of the total fan base, because you have to remember most people are casuals who are watching the highlights on Sports Center, which I think is extinct, so maybe not Sports Center, but ESPN. They're looking in the paper about what happened with the Mariners, all that. So 20, let's say conservatively, 20% of people are seeing your calls to boycott financially the Mariners, okay? What, 5% of that 20% are going to actually partake in financial boycotting? You know, that's where I have a huge problem with the whole financial boycotting thing. Now, if you want to do it on your own,
Mhm.
absolutely go ahead,
Go for it.
and
Yeah.
I understand not wanting to go to games. I understand not wanting to pay for Fubo to watch Root Sports. I get, not renewing your flex plan. That's fine. Go
Yeah.
ahead. But it's when people like put the onus on the others to also follow suit. And if you don't, then like you are part of the problem here. That's when we're just being ridiculous now, because I can speak for myself. Like going to the ballpark, even though I can't do it nearly as much as some people do, I can only go about 3 to 4 times a year, right? Going to the ballpark is a huge like mental health, like
Mhm.
self-care thing. It's like one of the places where I can just forget about any of my problems for a good few hours and go and have fun. And going to the ballpark is a fantastic opportunity to have those few hours to yourself and just enjoy baseball for what it is. It's a game, right?
Yep.
Some people, and I'm speaking for myself here, I would wager that a lot of people do the same thing, and a lot of those people do it way more often than I can. Some of those people don't do it as much as I can, or can't do it at all, so their way is they have to watch on TV. So it's one of those things where it's like guilting people into not going to games and not watching the team. Basically, it's just you can do it for yourself. You don't need to tell others that they need to do that as well, and they're not part of the problem. It's not your fault that at the start of this season you thought Mitch Garver, who has had multiple years of over 130 WRC plus ball, it's not your fault that you thought he would maybe do that again. It's not your fault that you thought Jorge Polanco was going to be a 118 WRC plus bat, which he's been for 10 years. God forbid you thought that was going to happen again. Wow. So
How
that's
dare
just
you?
where I get at is yeah, it's just, do it for yourself. That's fine. But we don't need to blame fans for going to the ballpark. We don't need to blame the ballpark entertainment team for putting on fireworks nights or putting in, whatever, like,
Bobbleheads. Yeah.
baseball's a game. Like I get people put money into it and people really want this team to go well. A lot of people like this is one of their things in life that brings them joy. Like let them have that joy. So that's where I'm at
Yeah.
with that.
No, perfect. Well said. And I'm with you. If you're someone that's boycotted and canceled your TV and or canceled Root Sports, I support you. I 100% do. And I totally understand it. I really do. But one, to everything Jake just said, and it's regardless of fans not being in seats or not, it's John Stanton's job to put a winner on the field. So regardless of like, it's not your responsibility to go like, oh, I need to boycott. Again, if you want to, fine, no issues with that. But that's on him, regardless of what the attendance is and what it's not. He needs to put the winner on the field because that's his job to do that. And, like you said, it's just, I'm the same way. We're both dads. I know a lot of people watching are probably dads. I want to take my kids to the ballpark. I don't live in Seattle, but if I did, we'd still be there a handful of times a year because it's a great thing to do. Get outside. It's an escape for me. That's why I started this channel. Sports is an escape for me from some of the things that, just life. Life can be very hard, and sports is a great way to get away from that. Not get away is maybe the wrong choice, but just have that few hours of something that is a release from the rest of the world a little bit. And, it's not on anybody in the fan base that this team is struggling or not living up to expectations. Now, if we want to get on Jerry and Justin for not making the right moves, totally fine. Totally fine. But any fan that thought this team might be successful, myself included, I thought they'd win the AOS. They still could. It's not on the fan base. It's not on Mariners Twitter. It's not on the content creators that are going on talking about this team and giving you their honest thoughts on it. The blame is within the organization. and people that want to go enjoy an afternoon at the ballpark, I support that. Like I said, I support both. If you're someone, again, that's canceled your tickets, I get that. I really do. I've said it to people that have mentioned in my comments. I totally get it. People that have told me like, hey, I just can't watch anymore. I'm done with the team. I support that. I totally get not wanting to listen to Mariners talk every night. I support that. I'd probably be the same way. But it's also not on the fan base for having some optimism about a team or being pessimist about the team. It's just, it comes down to the organization. It's their job to make this work. We have jobs. I know Jake's got a full-time job. I've got a full-time job. That's our responsibilities, hold us accountable for that. But, in terms of everything else, I'm not just talking about us too. I'm talking about the whole fan base in general, to Jake's point. So I thought that was a really, really good point, and kind of mini rant that you had there. I thought some fantastic points. So we're going to go ahead and get out of here. We're running at 40 minutes here. So I hope you guys enjoyed this one. Great win today for the Mariners. Hopefully that can springboard a series win in LA. We'll see. Brian Wu and Bryce Miller will take the bump the next 2 days. They've been fantastic. Again, I will have Jake's channel linked in the description down below. I know we had some content updates today, so go check that out. Go subscribe to his channel. And then obviously hit the sub button here on Jay's Trident. Like the video, comment your thoughts down below, and we will see you all tomorrow night for the post-game recap. Have a great night, everybody. And as always, and still, go Mariners. Peace.